Insurance went up so much. He's talking about yes, yeah. $4,000 for the yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start the learning sponsors, gentlemen. A year of learning, Martin Lippman, a family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bat Pinchas, friends of Herb Jeremiah, Svi Ben Zev, friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler, in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Kohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Stamalka Bat Mishum Yisachar. Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinza Bat Yosef Chaim Bechava, Hanan Ben Moshe Eliezer Vechana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi V'Tzipora, Yisra Ben Yoel Moshe Cohen Vechana, Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bat Meir, Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Chaim, Marsha Bronner in memory of her husband, Harav Yerachmiel Ben Shmuel, friends and family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yudel Ben Baruch Leib HaKohen, friends and family of Siggy Bessler, Shalom Shraga Ben Dov, friends of Marvin Weinstein, Mordechai Ozer Ben Yisrael Aharon. A month of learning by Mel and Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel Bat Yehuda Leib. Judith and Michael Poretsky, in memory of her father, Yaakov Yitzchak Hershima. Isaac and Eda Novik, in memory of his mother, Miriam Gittel Bas Hanoch Henech. Tova and Leo Zimmer, in memory of her mother, Henya Bat Rebero. V. Pizer, in memory of her husband, Harav Yisrael Chaim Ben David. Rabbi Avi and Lorraine Glatt, in memory of Pacey Ackerman's brother, Chaim David Ackerman. Perry and Jill Meltzer, in memory of his mother, Malka Bat Baruch, and his sister Golda Leah Bat David Halevi. A week of learning by Marty and Judy Engel, in memory of his mother, Etta Sarah Ben Ephraim Fischel Halevi. Beverly Hersko, in memory of her father, Yisrael Ben Chaim Tzvi. Judy Iger, in memory of her mother, Bela Bat Anshel Yitzchak. Mira Sennett, in memory of her mother, Shosha Bat Avraham Halevi, and her mother-in-law, Reitza Bat Yitzchak Hayakov. Today we have a day of learning by Brenda Stochel, in memory of her husband, Naftali Hertz Ben Shlomo, by Judy and Ari Cohen, in commemoration of the Shloshim of their friend Marvin Weinstein, Mordechai Ozer Ben Yisrael Aharon, Judy and Ari Cohen, in memory of their friend Anita Weinstein, Ita Bat Avraham. Also Bob and Judy Thaler, in memory of his brother, Avram Yechiel Michal Ben David Eliyahu. Shem is heaven Aliyah, Crank Rafi of Dati Yeshua Shem Matlea Poban Israel Victor Ben Shkia.
Okay, Rabosai, in the interest of reducing tension, etc., I'm going to give you a little introduction to today to make things easier. Overall, we have a tremendous argument, and we've encountered it before, essentially based on the way that we explain the psukim in the Torah. According to one opinion, we all have seen from the way that we darshan, that when a person admits to a fine, they don't have to pay the fine. The question is, are they only temporarily exempt from the fine because there were no witnesses and they admitted? But if witnesses ever show up, what's the difference if the person admitted? There were always witnesses. There were witnesses, so they have to pay the fine. That's one opinion. So one opinion is that that the exemption of admitting to a fine is only so long as witnesses don't come. But when witnesses come, the mission's out the window. Goodbye, Charlie. The other way says no. The other way says that when a person admits, as long as they beat the Eidim, they beat the witnesses to the punch, even if the witnesses come afterwards, the person remains exempt. Once he snuck in under the wire and he admitted before the witnesses came, witnesses coming won't have any effect. Okay. Now, what's strange, and I want to explain you something that I have a manual for learning Gemara. So one of the things I show is that after a person has analyzed the Gemara, and as soon as they understand it, then we have to analyze the Gemara as a shiur. Remember, the redactors of the Gemara wrote it up as a lesson to teach us the oral law. So then we have to study the way that they presented it and question if their presentation was the best presentation possible. And then we let's say challenge it, say, and of course, then we realize we might think that it would be better presented this way or that way. And then we realize that the perfection of the way that they presented it, and we have a whole nother level of understanding of the oral law and the halacha. No, it's because we're looking they are teachers, you understand? So we first challenge their presentation, eventually understand it. So studying the presentation of the Gemara also yields many, many insights and many halachas. Okay, so it's very, very, very important. That's the last stage of analysis. That's when we come really, that's when we really come, and at that point you start to stand at Sinai and hear God speak. So now, today's Gemara is going to have something surprising. Why is that? We're going to take an opinion, which is really the opinion of Rav, yet we look at it as the opinion of Rav Hamnuna. And we ask a kasha from the Gemara, and then from the Mishnah, we have a Mishnah against what Rav Hamnuna said, and then we move on. So it's very shocking, of course. But it's only shocking if you haven't seen the entirety of the discussion. But at first glance, the Gemara just moves on. We have a Mishnah against somebody, and we continue discussing it and bring all kinds of arguments, pro and con. The answer is, of course, that the Mishnah is only a knockout blow to the opinion of Rav that Rav Hamnuna represents, not with the special understanding of Rav Hamnuna. And later we'll see that with the special understanding of Rav Hamnuna, not only does the Mishnah not undermine that opinion, it even supports it. And that's the point. So we have to remain. That's why you'll see the Gemara does it. But the Gemara leaves something shocking. That's the last time you should worry. That's not when the Gemara does something shocking, you shouldn't worry so much because it's shocking. If it's shocking, there's gonna be a clear resolution. You understand? The more shocking the problem, you understand, the more relaxed, the more relaxed you can be because you know it's going to be there. Nobody's going to do that without having something coming around the corner. Okay, so that's essentially today's discussion is going to be first the general, so to speak, theory of Rav, which is that even if witnesses come after a person confessed, the person will not have to pay the fine. Okay, and then we're going to go to the specialized understanding of Rav Hamnuna, which I haven't spelled out, which we'll spell out shortly. Okay, but that's the whole traveling of today. That's most of today's daf. Okay, so yesterday we read a Mishnah, and then now we want to read the Gemara's analysis of that Mishnah. So it's Ayin Dalet Amud Beis. At the Gemara, where it says Gemara, right? That's easy enough. Where it says Gemara, that's always a good sign. Okay, so the Gemara says like this: we want to understand what happened when the person shechted or sold. He says, "You told me what? You told me what? Al pi echad. If there were two witnesses that the person stole, but then there was only one witness that he shechted." He doesn't have to pay the 4 and 5 because what? Because no, the Gemara says Pshita. That's obvious. Who needs to tell me? Why do I need a mission to tell me that one witness cannot cause a person to pay money? Amr, they said you're right. And the Chiddush is something else. The Chiddush is to put in apposition the rule of one witness and the rule of confession, because they were both taught together. If he confessed, he doesn't pay the fine of 4 and 5, and if there was one witness on the 4 and 5, he doesn't pay it. Al Kamashman wants to teach me it comes to place in apposition the self-admission and testimony with one aid, with one witness. Why? What is it teaching me? Okay, no, what's it telling me? Just like the rule of one witness, just like one witness, if another witness would come and join together with him afterwards, Mechayev, even though now the one witness can't extract money from the person who shechted, but if he got another partner, you got another witness, and we have more than one opinion whether we can accept the testimonies of each one separately or not. But that's not the point. In the end, if there are two witnesses, in the end we will extract the money. Al piatzu anami, so we put in that position. And also, when a person confessed, Ki atu edim, when witnesses come after he confessed, Mechayev will also be obligated. Just like what? So long as there's one witness against him, he doesn't pay the 4 and 5, but when the second witness shows up, he does pay the 4 and 5. So too, when he confesses by himself, so long as no witnesses show up, he doesn't pay the 4 and 5. But if they show up, he does pay. La puke, this unique composition of the Mishnah is la puke midrav huna amarav. Obviously, it's coming to knock out what Rav Huna said. I said Rav Hamnuni. What Rav Huna said, yeah. What Rav Huna said in the name of Rav. No, I'm sorry. I mean, before I said Rav Hamnuna because of later, right? So he said Rav Huna Amarav. Rav Huna said the name of Rav. Rav Huna Amarav. Moda b'knas. If a person admits to a fine, and then witnesses come, pater, the person is exempt, even though witnesses came later. But our Mishnah clearly holds against Rav and says what? That no, you're only exempt for the fine so long as you admitted and no witnesses came. But if witnesses come, as far as we're concerned, the admission is out, and you have to pay. Why? No. That's not the point. The way we say that we improve. No, that's
he's
correct.
being sued.
But no. We're putting the point is like this. If there was one aid, and you don't pay the fine, but the second aid shows up, you do. So the same thing. So the same. So the same thing is like this. So when he admits to the fine, he doesn't pay it. But if two witnesses show up, then it's too late. That doesn't matter. Even though he admitted, he still has to pay. Why is that? Because here, admission means there was no testimony against them. Once there's testimony against them, it's not, as far as we're concerned, it's not admission anymore. Yeah.
He doesn't want to lie. Say I didn't do it.
I'm not. What's the question? What's your question?
Why would somebody admit to it if there's basically no benefit? If because if he doesn't admit to it, he's home free.
Right.
Home free.
So so there's lots of possibilities. So what not every admission is for pragmatic purposes. On the contrary, as a matter of fact, we're going to see sometimes when a person admits for pragmatic purposes, it's not an admission at all. No, I'm saying it has.
He's already stolen it. He's already
right. No, wait. So you're right, but here, so there's a few points. One, a person's admission obviates the need to prove him wrong, etc. Is he willing to pay right away? Admission does a lot. He says, "Listen, I admit I'm doing tshuva. I'm going to pay you." But the question is now how much. So he obviates litigation and does a lot of things. Then by admitting, he comes to the court. He says, "I have to pay." So we say, "Okay, thank you very much. Here's your receipt." He's obviating certain troubles on the part of the person who stole it.
I think the average person steals something and then kills.
Yeah, but he wants to do tshuva.
So I'm saying, the guy's repenting. The guy's repenting. Yeah, here it happens. It happens. People change.
But the
people change.
Gemara's normal derech is to be done l'chavskos. You may have faltered, but now you want to make good. But
we're going to see in a minute that we're going to see in a minute if a person has an ulterior motive in admitting, we're not even going to call it an admission. We'll see. Okay, Gufa. Let's go back to the Gemara. The Gemara says, let's go back. Let's get the actual subject. Amar Pumar Rav. Rav Huna said in the name of Rav, even if a person admitted to a fine, which should exempt him, but if the witnesses came afterwards and testified that he committed the crime that brings about the fine, he has to pay. So Rav Chisda says, you know what? I'm going to bring a kasha to you. I'm going to show you that it's not true and that he really has to pay. Why is that? Remember, we learned yesterday that when a slave goes free for a person, when a person takes out the eye or the tooth of a slave, the slave going free is itself a fine. Yeah, he knocked out an eye, and the whole slave is going free. It's a fine. So Ma'aseh, now Rabbi Gamliel, we had a number of places in the Gemara. Rabbi Gamliel had a slave who he really thought very highly of. Ma'aseh Rabbi Gamliel shesime saying Tevi Avda. Rabbi Gamliel had once upon a time. There's a story that he blinded the eye of Tevi, his slave, this slave who he liked very much. And now what? So it's going to come out now that what? It's going to come out that because he blinded the eye, that the slave is going to go free. And he was very happy. Simcha Gadol, he had a very great joy. Why? Because he really felt this is a good guy. And the Torah there's an assay, a positive precept that forbids us from freeing slaves without a mitzvah to free them. So he really wished he could free him, but he couldn't. God said no. And now by the fact that it came out that he blinded his eye, it came out he was joyful that he was going to free, his slave was going to go free, which he always wanted. So he ran into Yeshua. Okay, Amar, he said to him, did you hear the good news? Did you hear my slave Tevi is going free? I'm so happy that he's going free. Amar, Yeshua said to him, Lama, he says, why is he going free? Amar, he says, because I blinded his eye. Amar, he says, what you're saying means nothing. There's since there were no witnesses to you doing it. So since there were no witnesses to you doing it, okay, and a person who admits to a fine is exempt. Since the slave going free is a fine, you just shot yourself in the foot. You were happy. You have nothing to be happy about. Without witnesses, you're stuck because your admission is admitting to a fine of him going free. He's not going to go free. Sorry. Now the thing is, but if we think of what he said the only reason he's saying what is that he's not going to go free because there's no witnesses. But the inference seems to be what? That even if you admitted, but there were witnesses, he would still go free. Ha, that's the inference I. The implication being, Yesh lo edim, if there were witnesses, chayev, okay, he would be obligated to free him. And therefore we can derive from here, motive knas, that if a person admits to a fine, and the witnesses came afterwards to accuse him, chayev, he's still obligated. So you see, akasha to what Rav Huna said in the name of Rav. Yes. Remember, we had this the other day. But yeah, the slave going free is a kanas. Think about it. Look, he knocked out an eye. He's losing the whole slave. He's paying for the whole slave. He's losing the whole slave.
Not just
He's losing the whole slave. So it's not commensurate with the damage. Yeah. Okay. Amarle. I mean, we say a lot of it. That simply, it's not. It's a fine. Amarle. So at this point, okay. Now, so there you have a tremendous kasha. Rav Chizda asked a tremendously powerful kasha Rav Huna. You see from the way the Rabbi Yeshua spoke to Rav Gamliel, it's clear that even after a person admits, if witnesses come, that the fine is in place and it doesn't. The admission is knocked out. Amarle. So Rav Huna said to him, no. He said that's no proof. Shani Rabbi Gamliel. By Rabbi Gamliel, it's different. The lo bifnei based in Odi. That confession wasn't a confession. Right. The problem was what? That since he confessed outside of Basin, okay, so it's not really a confession. And that's why if the witnesses would come, so he would have to pay. But had he confessed in the Basin and witnesses would come, they wouldn't have to pay. Well, I says, what are you talking about? Bahar Rabbi Yeshua Av Basin. Rabbi Yeshua himself, and Rabbi Yeshua is an Av Basin. So the fact that that Rabbi Gamliel said what he said to Rabbi Yeshua is a confession in Basin. Gemara says, lo, Shalom Basin Avakoi, but it doesn't matter because, pardon me, I would have thought he's in Basin. The answer is no, but Rabbi Yeshua wasn't standing in the Basin. The Gemara says, okay, good. But now, so now we've knocked off that particular. Pardon me. So therefore what? So we have a kasha. We have a kasha of.
This raya is no longer.
Yeah. So 1 second, please. He said that it wasn't really. He said that it wasn't really an admission. But we knocked off his defense, and we said what? We said no because it was. I said it wasn't really an admission. But had it been an admission, then he would have been free, even if he would have been free from the payment, even if witnesses came. Now, the Gemara says 1 second. I'm going to show you that this argument, okay, is actually an argument of the rabbis. Well, Tanya, didn't we learn? We learned, in other words, what actually happened in this story with Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua was itself a matter of debate. Well, Tanya, didn't we learn? And our brayso, remember what Rabbi Yeshua said? Well, listen, you have no witnesses. Okay, but take a look. Okay, it says Amar Lo. He says, well, Tanya, didn't we learn? We learned, and the brayso gives a different version of the story. But Rabbi Yeshua says to Rabbi Gamliel, says, don't be so happy. Amar Lo, he says, Ein b'dvarecha klum. He says, your words have no meaning. Why shekvar odesa? Because you already admitted, okay, and therefore what?
Even if witnesses,
and therefore once you admitted, you're exempt, even if witnesses come. So my love, okay, Tanais, you see that the two different languages itself represents a Tanaic argument exactly about what Rav Chisda and Rav Huna are arguing. Why? Tana de Amar Shekvar Ein Lecha Eidim. The Tana says that Rabbi Yeshua said, "What? Don't be happy, your slave's going free because there's no witnesses." So the implication being what? But if the guy admitted and witnesses would come afterwards, he would be obligated to pay the fine. Okay, and the slave would go free, and the slave would go free. And the other Tana that learned that what Rabbi Yeshua said to him was what? Was Kvar Hodesa, since you already admitted, he'll never go free because you're exempt. He holds what? That if you admit to a fine and witnesses come afterward, that you're exempt. So we see from the language of the two Tanaim that the argument of Rav Chisda, Rav Huna itself is an argument of Tanaim. Gemara says, "Lo." I says, I don't have to say that that's the argument. I'd rather say what I could say what like Rav Huna says in the name of Rav, that if a person admits to a fine and witnesses to come afterwards, he remains exempt. Once you admit it, it's out. But how come if this is the argument? What were the two different languages of the story? Both admit that what? The other way, like Rav Huna and like Rav, that once you admit, witnesses will not obligate you to pay the fine. So why these two different languages? This is the argument. Hi, Tana Amar Kvar Ein Lecha Eidim. The Tana says that Rabbi Yeshua said, what? You have no witnesses. Sabar, he holds, Chutz LeBeis Din Ave. He thinks that the facts of the story were that they were outside of Beis Din. And therefore what? You have no witnesses. And since his admission was no admission, goes outside of Beis Din, if the witnesses would come, he would have to pay. The slave would go free. Why? Because he never admitted. He never. Yeah. The Haftana the Amar, and the Tana that told the story, Shekvar Hodisa, that what Rabbi Yeshua said to Rabbi Gamliel was, you already admitted, so Rabbi Basin, he thinks that the story happened to Basin, but really everybody agrees that if you admit properly in Basin, and then witnesses come, that you are exempt. Itmar. Now we learn the following. Now we're going to see get into the heart of the argument. If a person admits to a fine, and witnesses come afterwards to testify to what he admitted to, Rav Omar Pater, Rav says he remains exempt. Shmuel says no. He says he's only exempt so long as there's no witnesses. Once there are witnesses, the law disappears. Amar Rav Bar Chilai, my time of the Rav. So what was the exact argument of Rav and Shmuel? Is it simply a matter of thinking? The answer is no. And as I mentioned to you before, it has to do with the way we derive things from the Torah. Why? We learned this earlier. We learned this earlier in the Masechta. We have we had a pasuk that has a double language. It says himotze timotze. If it's going to be found, he's going to found. We find the guy. We find it. We himotze timotze. It's found. So what's the double language? Himotze timotze. Himotze be'edim. If we find it that the whole case we have witnesses timotze b'dayanim. Okay, so in those, if there's witnesses that he stole, then we can come to the judges and make him pay. But when is he going to pay double? When there were witnesses there, they can go to court, make him pay double. But if he makes himself obligated, okay, he does not pay. So if he admits it, okay, he doesn't pay. So you see what we learned, that a person who admits to a fine is exempt. But the only problem is this: why do we have to use that pasuk timotzi to teach me that? We have a much more classic learning that a person who admits to the fine is exempt. Lamali says, why do I need it? We learn a different way. It says whatever the judges will find him and will assess him to be guilty of, he has to pay. It's what the judges find him guilty of. Okay, what? The judges and not himself. What the judges do, but not himself. So why did I have to have a second derivation that a person who admits to a fine is exempt? So why did the Torah give me a second derivation? It must be what? To deepen the exemption, to teach me not only as a person from Asher Yashin Elohim, what the judges find him guilty of. That tells me what the judges find him guilty of a fine, and not what he finds himself guilty. So that I know already, the basic principle that a person who admits to a fine is exempt. But there's a deeper, why did I have a second derivation of what appears to be the same point from Himatzi Timatzi into it's not the same point. It's teaching me a deeper point. Not only is a person who admits to a fine exempt so long as no witnesses are come, but it teaches me that a person admits to the fine, even when witnesses came afterwards, he remains exempt forever. So therefore, Rav learns from the double derivation. From the double derivation, I learned that not only is the guy temporarily, so to speak, exempt from the fine, he's permanently exempt from the fine, even if witnesses come. Shmuel says no. He says that's no proof. Why? And as we learned earlier in the Masechta, remember a while ago, we needed that special learning of Himatzi Timatzi, that special language. Remember, that was by the thief, and by the thief as opposed to a watchman. Okay, the Tana de Bechizkiah, like we learned Bechizkiah, that the thief, even though the language of the pasuk make you think not so, that a person who stole has to pay double. Also for inanimate objects, etc., and all kinds of animals, for all of the details that we learn from the pasuk. Okay, good. So we understand. So Rav and Shmuel disagree about the basic derivation, and that's why they argue about the law. Rav wants to come to Shmuel and say, listen, let me bring you a difficulty that makes it very difficult to accept your position that when the witnesses come afterwards, he has to pay, even though he admitted beforehand. We learned in the following brisa. Raw Adim, okay, the guy saw, this is what I mentioned to you earlier. The guy sees that the witnesses are about to come. And he quickly says, Gonafti, he says, I stole. He sees witnesses are about to come in and testify against him. So he quickly runs, he says, I stole. I stole it, so I'm obligated to pay.
Give it back.
I'm obligated to give it back. And what? And he said, but I didn't shecht it or sell it. Okay, so in such a case, he only pays the principal, but he doesn't pay the knas. He doesn't pay the double. Why? Because he admitted to the fine. Okay, and now we're assuming that what? And we're assuming that the witnesses came afterwards. And even though the witnesses, because he saw they were coming, so we assume the witnesses came afterwards. And even though they came afterwards to testify about what he admitted to, he still is exempt on what he admitted to on the double payment. So that's a big kasha to Shmuel. So even though the witnesses came, they didn't obligate him on what he admitted to. Amar Lei, so Shmuel said to him, he says, what are you talking about? The witnesses didn't come. He saw the witnesses coming. He got scared. He admitted, and the witnesses never came. But they didn't. In the end, they didn't testify. They didn't testify against him. They didn't testify against him about the theft. Although they testified obviously about the 4 and 5. Okay.
Well, we don't know that.
Yeah, we do. Okay, now, so therefore, Shmuel can answer. So Rav says, "Come on, you can't." He says, "How can you answer me that? How can you tell me that the witnesses never came?" Well, pardon me. No, you still have a problem. I'm going to tell you that what you're saying can't be true anyway. You're still wrong from the Brisa. The Tari Sefer, because in the end of the Sefer we have a very interesting statement. Elazar Shimon says, "Yavo Eidim v'Ya'idu." Let the witnesses come, okay, and testify, even after he admitted, and he'll have to pay. So you see what Mechlal, the Tanakama Sober. So you see that the original opinion holds low. That what if even if the witnesses come, you don't have to pay. So you see what from the way that Rabbi Elazar Shimon spoke. So you see that the Tanakama holds against you, unlike me. Amalei Shmuel, he says, okay. He says, Rabbi Shimon the Takavasi. He says, okay, but you're still happy with me. At least I got Rabbi Shimon who holds like me. So Tanakama is like you. Rabbi Shimon is like me. He says, honor the Amreik of Rabbi Shimon. I'm paskening like Rabbi Shimon. Now the Gemara says like this. He says, L'shmuel ba'dei Tanai. So okay, on Shmuel, he definitely got a kasha. He came out, he argued on his own volition an argument against a Tana. He admits he's against the Tanakama of the Brisa. The Rav Mileva Tanai. Should I say that
Rav was against the Tanakama? Shmuel is with the Tanakama. Oh no, I'm sorry. Shmuel is the one who says you pay.
No.
So the Shmuel is Reb Shimon.
So okay, but he says so for sure, if you're going to accept the Brisa is a major kasha to Shmuel because he's against the Tanakama. The Rav Mileva Tanai. But am I forced to ask a kasha to Rav and say what? That he's against Elazar Rabbi Shimon? The answer is, Rav can say no. He said, this Brisa doesn't present a kasha to me at all. It is a kasha to Shmuel, but it's not a kasha to me. Honor the Amri, when I say that when you admit to a fine, even if witnesses come after you don't have to pay, what I say was a feeler of Elazar Rabbi Shimon, even if Elazar Rabbi Shimon. Elazar Rabbi Shimon said when the witnesses come, he's going to have to pay. He says, Ad kan lo kam Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon hasam. When did Rabbi Elazar Shimon say that when witnesses come after a confession, that the confessor has to pay? He really holds like me, that in principle you don't have to pay. But why over there did he say it? That's what he says, because there he's admitting only for pragmatic purposes. He knows the witness is about to come, so he jumps in and he wants to get in. He wants to get in because he wants to get in before they accuse him. So we say what when he admits in anticipation of the witnesses, that's not an admission, and it's as if he didn't admit at all, and he has to pay. But of course, in general, but in the normal case, like I said to you, the modem answer where the person admits on their own volition. I feel Elazar Shimon admits. So therefore, what? So there's no problem. So Rav says the Brisa doesn't present a kushya to me; it only presents a kushya to you. Now, up until now, we've assumed, like I said to you, a very simple principle. Rav derives from the pasuk that once you admit, you're exempt from all fine, from the fine, even if witnesses come. Shmuel says no, you're only exempt so long as witnesses don't come. But if witnesses come, whatever, it doesn't matter. You'll have to pay the fine. We're about to learn a special interpretation of Rav, and it's a very reasonable explanation, as you'll see. Why? Because I'm not saying this has to be the reason, but it's very reasonable. Why is that? Because you say, listen, you know what? You know why the Torah exempts somebody? If a guy's willing to shoot himself in the foot and to straighten himself out, we exempt him from a fine. So let's say a guy comes in and he says, listen, I'm sorry, I stole that thing. I have to pay back. Okay, so yeah. He has obligated himself to pay back the money what he stole. Okay, so we say the double payment, you don't have to pay. But what if a guy makes an admission where he essentially obligates himself to nothing? Did he really do anything? Is that really an admission? What did he do? What did he do for us? Nothing. Is that an admission? What's an admission? An admission is when you obligate yourself. What's an admission? You hurt yourself a little bit, so that's called an admission. We exempt you from the fine. But if you didn't do anything, who's exempting you? So Rav says this idea is the truth about Rav. What we assumed up to Rav up to now was universal. That the second you admit, you're universally exempt from the fine no matter what happens. He says, no, it's not that simple. What's called an admission, even according to Rav, an admission will exempt you permanently if that admission obligates you. But if the admission doesn't obligate you, it's not an admission and you will still be vulnerable to the witnesses. Okay, let's see. Amr Rav Nuna, he says, Mistabra Milsa de Rav. What Rav said makes sense, but Omer Gonafti. Okay, so for example, in the case where he says, look, I stole that thing. The witnesses come and now testify that he stole. He just admitted it. Potter, okay, he's exempt from paying the double payment. Because when he admitted, he did obligate himself to pay back the principal until he opened his mouth. He didn't have to pay anything. Now he has to pay it, and has to pay the principal. So he exempt him from the fine. Let's say a guy says, I didn't steal anything. Ubo Edim Shagonav, and witnesses come that he did steal. Okay, he said I didn't steal. Witnesses come and say he stole. Now he's obligated what? He's obligated double. And then he says, you know what? I want to admit that I shechted it or I sold it. And then again, Uvo Edim Shatabachumachar, and then witnesses came to testify that he shechted or he sold. Even according to Rav, Chayav, he'll be obligated. Why? Shahari Patar Biklum. Because once he had witnesses against him that he stole, when he admitted that he shechted or sold it, the upshot is what? That he's exempt from the fine. He hasn't obligated himself to anything. In such a case, and we say he didn't really admit, that's not an admission. And when the witnesses come, he has to pay. Okay, so that's what he said. So now Rava says a very triumphant thing. He says, listen, I'm about to make a knockout blow to what Rav Nuna said. I'm going to prove that Rav Nuna said is absolutely impossible. It's not true. How is that? Because I'm going to show him that he says, Kapachti l'sabi de Rav. He says, I'm able to beat in argument the elder of the yeshiva of Rav. Who is that? Rav Amnuna. I'm going to show you Rav Amnuna said it's not true. Why? Because other rabbis who really knew, okay, did not say like him. Why? Let's go back to our original story. You remember the story that Rabbi Gamliel was so happy that his slave was going to go free, and Rabbi Yeshua said to him, "Listen," he says, "Listen." He told him, "Listen, you have there are no witnesses. The slave's not going to go free." So now he says, "The case of Rabbi Gamliel, when he said what? When he admitted to blinding the eye of his slave, he was exempting himself from anything. He doesn't have to pay. The slave doesn't go. The slave does. The slave doesn't go free. The slave doesn't go free. But Kamalei Rav Chisda, Rav Huna, and Rav Chisda said to him, "Listen, he's not going to go free." What did he say to him? Pardon me. And Rav Chisda brought this story against Rav Huna. Okay, to say what? You see what? That if the witnesses would come, even though he admitted, the slave would go free. And what? And Rav Huna didn't answer the most obvious answer. What should Rav Huna, who is certainly an expert in Rav, what should he be answered? He should have answered like you. Oh, no, that's not a proof. Of course, when the witness is coming to be obligated, you know why? Because when he admitted, he didn't obligate himself to anything. But under normal circumstances, if he obligates himself to something, that's when Rav said it. So since Rav Huna didn't answer that back to Rav Chisda, you see what you, Rav Huna, you are a lesser level student of Rav. You're wrong. You didn't know it. Okay, so incredible. But he said, okay, you knocked him out. Now, there's ways to answer that, by the way. Sometimes a person, even though an answer is available to somebody, they choose other answers so they feel they're better, etc. It's not always the fact that the person answer a particular answer is not always a knockout blow. They have other answers. Now we're going to start to try and prove Rav Hamnuna's principle. Now, I told you, it's so shocking because, remember, we had the whole mission against Rav, okay? But don't worry, you're going to see in a minute why it's all going to work out. Okay, now, Itmar Nami, okay? We're going to try and prove that what Rav Hamnuna said is true, that there's a difference between admitting when it doesn't do anything, when it doesn't obligate you, to admitting when it obligates you. And only when you admit when it obligates you will that exempt you from the fine, even if witnesses come. But if you admit in a way that doesn't obligate you, you won't be exempt when witnesses come because your admission was no admission. Itmar Nami, we learned that it was following. Amrav Chia Ba'abam Rabbi Yochanan, here we learn the following. Ganafti, a guy says, I stole. Ubo, the witnesses came, Shaganav, and said he stole. Potter, he's exempt from paying double. Why? Look, he says it explicitly. Why? Not only because he admitted, and when he admitted, he obligated himself to have to pay the principal. Aval Amar Loganov, let's say he says, I didn't steal. Loganavti, I didn't steal. Ubo, Edim Shaganav, now witnesses say that he did steal. And now he says what? Now he's caught and he has to pay double. He says, listen, I shechted or I stole. Now witnesses, after he confessed to shechting or stealing, witnesses came and said that he shechted or stole, chayav, he still has to pay. Why? Shahari potter atzman biklum, because the admission on the shechting or the selling didn't obligate him to anything. That's not a confession at all. So we see explicitly spelled out the name Rav Yochanan, exactly Rav Hamnuna's principle. Fantastic. Rav Ashi says, you know what? Masnisin Brisa Nami Daika. Our Mishnah that we just said was against Rav is going to be just like Rav Hamnuna, and a Brisa is going to support him also. We're on a roll for Rav Hamnuna. Masnisin, okay, how can we prove it from our Mishnah? Now keep your hat on. I want you to remember how we learned the Mishnah. We learned that the Mishnah put in that position what? Self-admission, confession, and what? And one witness. What was the purpose? And obviously, what do you mean? And first, everybody knows one witness is nothing. So what's one witness doing there? The answer is to tell you that you have to compare admission, confession to what? To one witness. Just like one witness, if ultimately it becomes two witnesses, the person is going to have to pay. So to confession, if it turns into two witnesses, so to speak, he'll have to pay. Oh my goodness, that was against everything we said. But get ready. We're going to do the same thing, but with a trick. He says, and it's going to prove Rav Hamnuna and prove Rav according to Rav Hamnuna. He says, why? We learned in our Mishnah, he stole, and two people testified that he stole. And but only you had one witness that he shechted or sold, or only he admitted that he shechted or sold. Mashal and Tashlum Kefil has to pay the double payment. There's two witnesses against him. Mashal and Tashlum Chamisha, but he doesn't pay the 4 and 5 because it was self-admission or because it was one witness. Lama li the Tani Gonav Apishnayim. Why did the Mishnah? You see what I'm doing? Studying the presentation of the teacher. Why did the Mishnah tell me that he stole by two witnesses, okay? Stole by two witnesses. Here, you want to teach me the principle that you're teaching? Listen, they teach me, Gonav v'tavach u'machar. If a guy stole and shechted and sold, al piyei there was only one witness, or al piyas, or he admitted to it. Ein mashal melakeren. He only pays the principal. If you want to teach me the principle of what? Of self-admission, one witness. Yeah, just say what? Say what? He admitted to stealing, etc., etc. He doesn't pay any of the fines. Okay, so why did you only tell me the law of self-admission by what? By 4 and 5? Shouldn't you have told me by the primary fine of what? Of double payment? Okay. So why did you tell me the witnesses? Why didn't you tell me he admitted? And you'll teach me admission by the primary fine. Elalav. So isn't this the intention of the teacher of the Mishnah? Ha kamash Rolan is teaching me this. Hold your hat on. If a guy stole by two witnesses and he shechted or sold by one witness, or al piyatu, or by his own confession, then and only then, that's when what? In that case, when he didn't obligate himself to pay anything, when he only admitted to what? To 4 and 5, but he didn't obligate himself to pay principal at that point. Who damrin, and that's when we say al pi atzmo. That's when we make the comparison that his own confession is compared dumiyad al pi elachad is like elachad, ma al pi elachad, just like one witness kiati elachad mitzayif yibei. If we would turn into two, okay, mechayiv, he'd be obligated to pay even though what? Even though he started out with one. Al pi atzmo nami, also when he confesses kiatu edim mechayiv. If his confession, so to speak, turns into two witnesses, they show up later, he has to pay. When is that true? That is only true in what? That his admission didn't obligate himself to anything, then we take the stringent comparison to one witness. But if he did everything by one witness, but if he'd stolen and he admitted to everything, he admitted to the stealing, he admitted to the 4 and 5. He says the chiyav atzmo b'keren. Then where he had obligated himself to pay the principal. We don't make the stringent comparison to one witness, and even if witnesses came afterwards, since he obligated himself, then he doesn't have to pay when the witnesses come. So now, my goodness gracious, not only is, if you learn Rav like Rav Hamnuna, not only is the Mishnah not against us, it's for us. Fantastic. You gotta love that. Rav Zalman Chaim Goldberg was one of our Gdoli Ador, and I had a very wonderful. I made him laugh all the time, and one of the ways I made him laugh, I was always very prepared in the Bach. The Bach, Bach up and down the whole Shas. It's great. Yes above, add above, take out above. Yes above, no above. There's all these things like that. So I used to prepare all the Bachs always prepare the Bach very carefully. So in the Shir, in the middle of the Shir, he would say a point, and I would challenge him on the basis of the Bach. If you put out the vav or put yes above or no above, it's against him. He would laugh out loud first. He would laugh, and then he would say, "You don't know." He says, "The Bach." He says, not, "If I said the Bach's against him," he says, "Not only is not against me, it proves my point. It proves my point. It's the other way. He's leaving. And if I, whatever he would say, he would laugh. He would laugh as it proves the opposite. Okay, now, so that's number one. So we brought up number one. So that we succeeded. So the Mishnah Mamish supports the Rav Hamnuna's Rav. It's beautiful. It's mamish. And we've obviated, so to speak, if you hold like Rav Hamnuna, we've obviated the Gemara's original kasha, what? On Rav, if you hold Rav as Rav Hamnuna. That's why I told you the story at the beginning. Now, Bryce, he says, now, this one, not as successful. I'm going to bring also proof to Rav Hamnuna from a Bryce. And it's the same thing. It's done by indirect proof. Here, the Tanya, because we learned. Raw Edim we learned in a Brisa. He saw the witnesses are about to come. Okay, V'Amar Ganafti, and he quickly says, "Listen, I stole. Like we said before, but I didn't shecht or I didn't sell. He only pays the principal that he admitted to. Okay, but he doesn't have to pay the double. Okay, he doesn't have to pay the double. Okay, even though the witnesses come afterwards. Lamali lemisna. So if that's true, why did you have to teach me? Why did you have to teach me what I stole, but I didn't shecht or steal? Nisne, okay, anode, okay, that what? Then why you have to teach the case where it's only where he admitted to the stealing, but he didn't admit to the shechting or selling. Nisne, you could learn. Now you take out the word let say, why don't you learn like this? He said, ganafti. He says, I stole, or alternatively, tabachta marcharti. He says, I shechted or I sold. Why didn't you teach me also the case where he didn't admit to the stealing, but he admitted to what? Okay, we only admitted to the shechting or stealing. Why did you not bring that case? Ella, okay, so why did you have to put it together? Ella, it's teaching me this. Time Adana Ganafti, because the only reason he's going to be exempt on all the fines is because when he admitted to all the fines, he said what? He said, I stole. Who the where he at least that he obligated himself to pay the principal, the butter, then he's exempt. But if he said I didn't steal, and then witnesses said that he stole because of Amar Tabachta Mecharti. Now he says what I shechted or I stole, in which case he's not obligating himself on anything, but merely what? He's merely what? Exempting himself from 4 and 5, okay, from the addition. Witnesses come that he shechted or sold the lochiv where he did not obligate himself. Chayiv. There he didn't obligate himself on Karen Chayiv. That's why Dafka split them up to teach me. Yeah. That's why Dafka split them up. Okay, because what? Because in a case where Alma Hodad is Pichalav Hodad. You see what? That admitting to the shechting, if they're split up, admitting to the shechting won't be an admission at all, and that proves Rav Hamnuna. If I might have said one point off, but you'll correct it. Amri. So they said no. This one no. Good try, but this one's not a proof. Why? I can tell you a different reason why the Brisa was written the way it's written. Okay, you don't have to explain it. What? That really what the Brisa holds, that really what, even if you just admitted to shechting or selling, and even though you didn't obligate yourself to anything by the admission, it could be what, that you're still, you're still exempt if the witnesses came. Okay. He gufa komashmalan, but it's coming to tell me something else entirely. That came into Omar Ganafti, that once a guy said what? He's coming to tell me the primary point. Why did it stick it all together? Because it came to Omar Ganafti, since he said, I stole it, even though he said what? I didn't shecht or I didn't steal. And witnesses come and say what? That he shechted or stole potter, he's still exempt. Even if he didn't say what? Pardon me. One second. Once he said I stole, even though he said, well, I didn't shecht, I didn't steal, and people came and testified that he did shecht or steal, he's still exempt. My time, what's the reason? Shalume Chamisha Amar Achmana. Here's why he's exempt. He's exempt for a different reason entirely. Because once he's exempt on double, he's always by definition exempt on the 4 and 5. Why is that? Because 4 and 5 is really what? 4 is really 2 and 2, and 5 is 2. 5 is 2 and 3. But 4 and 5 are always including the 2. Chamisha Achmana. The Torah said what? For cattle, 5. Below Tashlumi Arba, and not 4. So and not 4. If you're going to exempt him from the kefil, he's going to pay 4 and not 5. Okay, but lo tashlumi shlosha. For a sheep, he's going to end up paying 3 and not 2. So he's exempt anyway. Okay, so tell me what. So once he's telling me what that. So you can't make him pay the 4 and 5. Once he's exempt on the kefil, he has to be exempt on the 4 and 5. Now Ligmar says, okay, 1 second. Let me say what that this whole argument is an argument of the Tanaim. Again, akasha to our Morai. We learned the following in the Bryce. Two people testified that he stole. And 2 different witnesses testified that he shechted or sold. Who's made the Geneva? If the witnesses who said he stole were found to be conspirers, so the testimony of the original of the theft was out, so obviously the testimony of the shechting or stealing is out because maybe there was no theft. Maybe there was no theft. Okay, so therefore, who's Eidei Tvicha? Let's say the other way. So therefore, what? So therefore, what? So therefore, what? So therefore, the original witnesses who were found to be conspirers, they have to pay a double. The original witnesses, the original witnesses who were found to be conspirers have to pay double payment to the person who they said stole. Now, who's mu Eidei Tvicha? But let's say the other way. Let's say that not the original witnesses on the theft, but the witnesses on the shechting or stealing were found to be conspirers. Who mishalin tashlume kefal? So he is going to have to pay the thief is going to have to pay double to the thief because there were witnesses against him. Behain and the second witnesses who were conspired and said that he shechted or sold mishalin tashlume shlosha mishum shlosha. They have to pay. Let's say they have to pay the last 3. They have to pay to the person who they falsely accused. Okay, Mishum Sumcha, but Sumcha says no. He says something that does. It's like a non-sequitur. Doesn't make any sense. He says no. He says, hey, the witness of B'Shalom Tashnumi Kefal, the witnesses have to pay double. But who and the thief B'Shalom Tashnumi Shlosha Lapar, he pays 3 for a cattle, Ushnaim La'ayel, and 2 for a sheep. What? He says, but it says, he says, what on earth? How can I possibly locate Sumchas in any way that makes any sense? What's going on? Sumchas, okay, Sumchas. What's he referring to? He's talking about the first case where the witnesses on the theft were found to be conspirers. He says, I'm in shock. He says, Leslie Sumchas, does Sumchas not hold Eidu Shabbat Miktasa Bat Lakula? Certainly holds what that any witnessing that was out, everything is out. Okay, certainly the thief is not going to pay anything. How can you tell me he's going to pay? How can you tell me what that the thief is going to pay the 3 and the 2? Okay, what's going on? Okay. Ella must be what Aseifa must be what the Sumcha said is din about the second case where the witnesses who said that he shechted or stole were found to be conspirers. So then Shapar Kamer Rabbanim, what the rabbi said makes perfect sense. That what in that case. Since the first witnesses were good, he has to pay double because they were found to be a thief. And the conspiring witnesses on the shechting or the selling have to pay the thief, the falsely what for them was a falsely accused thief. They have to pay what they tried to make him pay, the 3. Ella milsach risik. So since Sumchas doesn't make any sense, we have to say that it was really a different argument entirely. Okay, and what was the real argument? Kagon the atu beitrei. Here's what happened. Hold your hat. 2 witnesses came and they said to a guy, "Ganafta, you stole." He says to the owner, he says, "He says, you know what? You guys are bums." He says, "Ganafta." He says, "I did steal." He says, "But tavachti mechate." Not only that, I stole and I also shechted and sold. I'm a bad guy. I stole and I shechted and sold. But you're really bad guys. But not in front of you. You are liars. You know what? It just so happens that you're right. I stole, and that's not all. I shechted, I stole, but you're bums. You never saw it. It never happened in front of you. It happened in front of other people. The Isi Sadi, and he brings witnesses, Vazminu, and he convicts them of conspiring against him. Okay, the Lobapagayu he shows it what that he never stole in front of them, and they're obligated. But I say about but then the guy who got stolen from. Saada, he brings the real witnesses, Vasider Bey, and they testify against him. They're going to that he stole and he shechted or sold. Now here's the argument. In such a case where he admitted to the shechting, because he admitted it. Let's say in Beis Din, He admitted let's say in Beis Din, he admitted it in front of the guys who he told were liars, but he admitted in Beis Din. You guys are liars. I did it, but you're bums. Now, yes. No, there's two witnesses who are utter liars. Okay, two witnesses who are truth tellers, and he admitted in front of the liars in Beis Din. And there's a third set of witnesses he brought to show that the first witnesses were conspirators. There's liars, but those who showed that the first guys were liars, conspirators, and the third ones who truthfully testified that he did everything wrong, that he did admit to. But now he admitted in court in front of the original liars. Now, what's the law? The Rabbanan Savri, it must be what? So now, what did the rabbi say the law was going to be? The rabbi said the law was that he's going to pay double, and the conspiring witnesses are going to have to pay the three. The Rabbanan Savri, Alpha Gaudo de Gneva, okay, Dog de Gneva, Machmas Edim Huda Komoda. The rabbis felt that even though he only admitted to the theft because he knew there's real witnesses. You see, he knows. He says, well, he knows there's real witnesses. The only reason because he thought they were coming, and you would think what? You would think that it's not a good admitting. It's still a good admitting. Okay, it's still a good admitting. Upater, and he's exempt. Okay, he's exempt. He's exempt no matter what, even though he admitted only because of them. But Sumchas believes what? But Sumchas holds no. He says, since the guy only admitted because he's afraid witnesses are coming, because the tficha loves odah. Okay, that admitting of the shechting is not an admitting at all. Okay, because such a thing. Okay, and Sumchas holds what? Because the only why, because he holds like Rav Nuna. The only time that an admission is an admission is when you obligate yourself. And since what? This is not really an admission. It's not an admission at all. Okay, and these first witnesses that they were found to be conspirators, Mishalmim Tashlumi Kefal, they have to pay the Ganav double payment. Who Mishalim Shloshel Apar V'Shnaim Lail. He has to complete the rest. He has to pay three for the cattle and two for the sheep, for the flock. Okay, so therefore the rabbis and Sumchas are arguing about Rav Amnuna. The rabbis don't hold like Rav Amnuna, and Sumchas does. You see what? Machlokas Tanaim about Rav Amnuna. So what are you talking about? Okay, you know what? I think I'm going to stop here only because we're about to get into this whole next piece of its own sugya. Let's stop here. We'll pick it up tomorrow. Okay, even though we have time. I think it'll be easier. Okay, I want to just check out one thing because I don't want to make this guy a liar with the story. The story you talk about, the television story. Remember, he's a defender, right? They didn't have the answer that I told you from the prosecutor, only his defense, right?
Yeah.
So what I think happened was like this: it must be the Goyish lawyer, the defender, took the thing from the television, and our Jewish guy, the boss, the prosecutor, is the one who knocked him out. Uh-huh. He stole the television defense, and the Jewish guy knew was the prosecutor. And he said, "You're crazy," and that because I thought because this guy thought I don't believe he wouldn't have made up. That's what must have happened.
Being a Jewish lawyer is a problem.
Yeah, that's all. There's a lot to talk about.
There's a huge issue.
A lot to talk about. He went to the biggest law schools, but what is the top one? So the super duper